Welcome into another edition of One-on-One Sports. Today we'll be talking about the Women's Final Four,
the Masters,
and the NBA playoffs. And it all starts right now. Welcome back into One-on-One Sports. Trey, we'll get this edition started off with the quick hitters. First up, Bronny James and that massive NIL valuation, $7.2 million. He's first in the top 10. Give me your thoughts.
Wow. Well, I understand it to a degree, right? You got to show a little respect, right? It's Bronny. I mean, what are we talking about? If you're a team, you're going to look at that. You want it, right? But that number is astonishing to me. I mean, how much higher is that than the next three people? The next player, for example, millions. I understand where they're coming from, but at what point do we have to say, how much different is the skill level, really? How much different of a player is he that demands this level?
Well, not only that, but he came in as a four-star, right? I mean, he's arguably, and yes, this is my hot take, but Bronny's not even that good. He's just popular because he's Bronny James.
Yeah.
And then you've got LeVar Ball, of course, coming in and saying, well, why don't you go to Australia? Because you play against grown men and get paid. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. How do you feel? Does Bronny go to Australia or does he cash in this NIL deal?
I'm not sure how much I value LeVar Ball's opinion on this whole topic, but I do think that there is something to be said there. If I'm Bronny James, I think I'm going to stick with and cash it in. I don't think that you really should be doing anything crazy like going overseas. But again, there's an argument to be made there. So it's an interesting situation, right? Obviously, it's a superstar son. He's going to come up as one of the best top-rated players, regardless of how he performs in the league. So certainly, there's plenty of arguments made for and against this deal. But I think largely it's understandable enough to the point where Bronny should continue on the path he's currently on.
And I mean, if you're a college trying to recruit him, what's it going to take?
A lot.
And I mean, moving on down the line to some more drama up north. Lamar Jackson requested a trade from the Ravens. The Ravens, of course, confident they'll be able to sign a long-term extension. He's looking for more than 200 bags. Mm-hmm. Team President Sashi Brown and John Harbaugh both saying they want to get a long-term deal done. But Lamar seems to have severed the tie.
Yeah, definitely he looks on the fence at best about this whole situation. Will anyone take him is the question. What other teams are really stepping up into that position and offering that massive deal that he's looking for? I don't see too many, which I'm a little surprised about because there are plenty of QB-hungry teams in the league. And personally, I'm just surprised that they haven't even been conversation with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, it's a little different given the whole agent situation and the controversy surrounding that. But I think that at the very least, there are teams around the leagues that should have talks with Lamar about these long-term deals and potential. Obviously, his health is the biggest issue here. That's really what's holding him back. But I'm taking Lamar over plenty of quarterbacks in the league that have already been signed. I'm taking Lamar over guys like Tua, Dak Prescott, Jimmy G. I'm really surprised that Lamar hasn't figured it out to this day.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, what do you think his chances are to return to the Ravens? I mean, look, he's all but severed that connection with Baltimore, but what are you feeling on the chances that he returns to John Harbaugh?
I'm going to say more likely than not, he does come back to Baltimore. I think the fans would want to see him again, regardless of how the coaching situation works out. And I think that the scheme is already set up there for him. He's shown to have success. I think they're just so close to figuring it out, and the fact that they haven't done it quite yet after these years is maybe what's holding him back personally as a player.
Moving on down to MLB opening day, my Atlanta Braves waxed the Washington Nationals. Matt Laguz's Mets are about to get waxed by the Miami Marlins tomorrow. The Kim Ng train is coming, and you can't stop it, Matthew. Your thoughts on opening day?
Oh, it's super exciting for MLB fans everywhere. The first time since 1968 that all 30 teams are going to play. That alone should get you to watch and pick up the phone and take a look at all the stats. I know I will be personally, and this is going to be one of the most exciting ones in decades, I'll say.
And here's another one. Justin Verlander already on the IL with a low-grade teres major strain. Matt, I don't want to rub it in, but I want to rub it in. Mets gonna Met. That's my opening day prediction.
Yikes.
And then moving on down to the Final Four, I mean, we've got some great teams. 3 new teams in the Final Four. Okay. UConn, the only returning team. We've got two arguably, mid-majors in the field. A lot of beach teams going on. What are your thoughts on the Final Four?
I'm super excited for this Final Four. Obviously, as you mentioned, UConn is the have-it team, and there's a bunch of have-not teams that we've got so far. Looking at the Florida Atlantic versus San Diego State game, I think the current line is San Diego State favored by 2 points, and that makes sense. I'm surprised they're only favored by 2 points, to be honest with you. They get into these scrappy defensive battles, have hit the under in their last 12 games. FAU gets a lot of their offense from beyond the arc, that three-point shot, and the Aztecs are one of the best teams in the country, number 2 in three-point defense. So I like SDSU to win that one. I honestly think they've had a deep run in the year where COVID canceled the March Madness.
Yeah, I mean, they were, almost a lock to be a number 1 seed. Like you said, SDSU favorite, a really good transition team, really good defensive team. 17% three-point defense, you mentioned it. FAU loves the three ball, so does John L. Davis, 17.3 points. But look, for Dusty May to get that win, what does that mean?
It's going to be huge, given that it happens, of course. I mean, it's for your school, for your program, it's got to be fantastic. Let's look at the other side, though. Let's look at the UConn game versus Miami. I understand how the Huskies are favored here, given how streaky Miami has been, but they've been the underdog in their last 3 games in this tournament by a large number of points, and they've won those games by the same large number of points, winning by 7, 14, and 16, respectively. I think this is going to be a battle of the big men, getting the rebounds to either extend or to change possessions. Miami, Norchad Omier, and UConn, Adama Sandago. Miami isn't an awesome defensive team, but I think if they can limit UConn's offense, grab those rebounds, they have the potential to catch heat at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, look, Adama Sanago is really, really good. Nobody in the Final Four has scored more points in the tournament than Sanago. He's got 80 already. He's also averaging almost 10 rebounds a game, shooting 66% from the field. So look, Dan Hurley is playing the role of Goliath, right? But if you're David and you're Jimmy Larinaga, and I've seen this in the SEC, or the ACC rather, all year long. Miami, underrated, overperforms. Nigel Pack, Isaiah Wong, their guard trio, spectacular. They get out in transition. They're great defensively around the rim. Miami's kind of a dark horse. What are you going to see from Jim Larinaga?
I think that UConn or Miami, whoever comes out, they're going to be the favorite in the finals. So obviously that's the biggest game to watch for me personally.
That'll do it for the quick hitters.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll have the women's Final Four. Welcome back into One-on-One Sports. Today we'll be talking about the women's NCAA Final Four. Bryson, who are you taking? Take it all home.
I'd have to say the Gamecocks of South Carolina are currently the favorite to ultimately get the big trophy at the end of the season. You look at their schedule right now, they've beaten 9 top 25 teams. Only 3 of their 36 games so far this season have been decided by single digits. They're currently winning on an average of 29.5 points per game. They're 7th in the nation in scoring right now as well at 80.5 points per game. I mean, their offense is incredible. They are just talented all the way across the board, and they just blow pretty much everyone out of the water every time they play somebody.
I mean, look, South Carolina is really, really good, right? And Dawn Staley, one of the greatest coaches of our time, is arguably in the running for almost any job she could ever want. Yes, that does include the NBA. But look, I'm going to take the Iowa Hawkeyes, and here's why. Caitlin Clark, first 40-point triple-double in tournament history, men or women, tournament history. Gabby Marshall's hitting about 50% of her threes. You know, this game really comes down to defense versus offense, Bryson. And here's the thing. Iowa, one of the more explosive offenses in the country. South Carolina, one of the better defenses in the country. But offensive-wise, South Carolina struggles. So I think really Caitlin Clark, born in Iowa, she promised head coach Lisa Blutter that she was going to take Iowa to a Final Four. She's done that. Hawkeyes bringing it home, baby.
I understand those points, but I think you also got to remember that South Carolina is still like 11th in the country when it comes to field goal percentage right now. And on top of that, they also lead the country in rebound margin and are second as well in just rebounds per game. I mean, they are dominant on the board. So while Clark may get open early and may make some great shots, I feel like Iowa's going to really, really struggle on the boards against South Carolina. That's going to give the Gamecocks just more possession, more shot opportunities overall. And I think that's why South Carolina would ultimately win it all in the championship.
Here's the thing, though. It all comes down to veteran leadership in the tournament. And I know South Carolina has Aaliyah Boston, right? But The starting five for the Iowa Hawkeyes has been in place for 90 consecutive games. 90. You can't get that kind of level of, continuity and production out of almost any team in the country. So this is really going to come down to a defense versus offensive battle. I don't know, man. I think Caitlin Clark's just going to ball out.
I have to bring up one more point, though. South Carolina, their bench players are averaging 36 points per game right now. They have 10 players that are averaging at least 5 points per game. Those entire second-string players could probably be one of the best teams of the nation if they started themselves. 1 through 10 on their entire roster are very, very good, so they have the depth to go really far as well, I would say.
Well, and here's the thing. What really saddens me, and I don't know how you feel about this, is that this is the regional matchup. The paired regional matchup is the Iowa Hawkeyes and the South Carolina Gamecocks. I feel like this is a Final Four, or this is a national championship matchup. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about LSU and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, argued by some to be kind of the most overhyped one seed, and yet they've still made it to the Final Four. So, with that said, Bryson, who's been your most surprising team?
Out of the entire college basketball season, or at least in the tournament, I would actually say Miami. They came into the tournament as a 9 seed, got the good win in the first round against Oklahoma State, but then that second round game against the first seed Indiana Hoosiers, that was very, very impressive. Shot over 50% from 3, shot nearly 50% from the entire floor, just played really great offensively. It looked like Indiana was going to make a comeback in that third quarter, but they stayed disciplined, they stayed cool as a cucumber, and they were just able to play their game and come out with a big win. And then on top of that, they beat Villanova in the next round, and so they made a very, very good run. And honestly, they maybe would be in the Final Four right now if they just didn't go really, really cold against LSU.
And I mean, for me, look, this is going to be a hot take, okay? This is going to be hot as hotty toddy. But Ole Miss and the Runnin' Rebels are on fire. Yes, they've been eliminated from the tournament, but they came in as pretty low seed and defeated Stanford, the Tara Vanderveer steamroller in Palo Alto in the Seattle Regional. They have a top 25 scoring defense. They only hold opponents to 56.3 points per game. I mean, they lost, yes, down the road to Louisville, but they lost to South Carolina by 29 in the SEC tournament and rebounded to beat, a favorite for the Natty, knocking them out of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very impressive there by LSU as well. Kind of goes back to the South Carolina conversation that when the Gamecocks played them, South Carolina also won by a very, very big margin. As you said, got knocked out of the SEC tournament, yet were able to go ahead and turn things around and just kept a really cool head and was able to do very, very well in the tournament. So I agree with that take overall, but I just think Miami coming in as the 9th seed, the lowest seed out of any Sweet 16 team this season, and then winning and going to the Elite Eight, I just think that is very, very impressive, considering that they were on the bubble, according to a lot of analysts. It wasn't even a 100% guarantee that they were going to get into the tournament after their blowout loss to Virginia Tech in the ACC quarterfinals.
So, I mean, looking at the tournament as a whole, we've seen some spectacular performances, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston. But who reigns supreme? Who's your season MVP, the queen of them all, for Bryson Burns?
It would have to be Caitlin Clark. I mean, I know that's the obvious answer, but it just has to be. She was already named the Naismith Player of the Year so far. One of the best three-point shooters of our generation. Shoots nearly 40% from 3, and that's even more impressive when you consider that a lot of her three-point shots are shot from the mid-court logo. She consistently pulls up from that spot of the court, and she sinks them most of the time. I mean, she is just obviously one of the best shooters in women's college basketball history.
Yep, Steph Curry type range. I mean, she came in averaging 27.3 points a game, 8.6 assists, 6.9 rebounds. I mean, she shoots almost 50% from the field. Her assist tally is the best in the nation. Look, I got to agree with you. Just because she has had one of the most dominant seasons that we have ever seen in a long time. She unseated Aaliyah Boston, last year's MVP, and she just had, an incredible run. But I have to say, I've got an honorable mention in Maddie Siegrist of Villanova because she is just absolutely lighting it up. She just recently declared for the WNBA draft. Our boy Zach Chofie is very, very happy, okay? And Maddie Siegrist deserves a very nice honorable mention.
I absolutely agree with that. But just going back to Caitlin Clark just one more time, I mean, she has scored at least 20 points in all but 3 games so far this season. And that performance against Louisville, where she had 41 points in that amazing triple-double, the 3rd most points in an Elite 8 women's game, that was just so impressive. Definitely kind of a game for the ages.
So that'll do it here for the NCAA Women's College Basketball Regionals. Bryson and Colby, we'll see you next time. The NBA playoffs are upon us, and I'm joined by 2 of the best, Jack Prahinsky and Chase Strasser. Boys, how you doing?
Fantastic. How are you?
So I guess to start off, it's been a tight race in the West, right? Nuggets, Grizzlies. We've seen some kind of topsy-turvy action in the West. Chase, we'll start with you. Who's out in the West?
Well, before we answer that question, you must know that, like you said, it's topsy-turvy. This will probably change and will change multiple times before we even enter the playoffs. But right now, given my extensive basketball knowledge, I have the Utah Jazz and New Orleans Pelicans missing out on both the play-in and the playoffs.
Well, I mean, you know, as a Carolina fan, I'm very, very happy when Zion Williamson fails to perform, as he always seems to do. But, Jack, we'll go with you.
I look at the Dallas Mavericks and I say to myself, hey, what are we doing here? They went all in for Kyrie Irving at the trade deadline, and it was a ridiculous move. You gave up your best perimeter defender in Dorian Finney-Smith, and you have Kyrie with a player option this summer, and they have totally bottomed out. And it is really hard to watch, and it's fascinating to see. You have Luka Doncic, he can carry you in a series, but I don't know what's going to happen down the stretch here.
And I mean, for Mark Cuban, he's obviously looking for veteran leadership in terms of Kyrie, but what has he gotten so far in your mind?
And I think that's a good point, but I think that Kyrie has actually been playing very well for Dallas. I think that while he is, he's always kind of been this lingering thing in the background, and he's always got something else going on, I don't think he's the problem. I think that Jason Kidd, his coaching struggles, his failures to make adjustments, they really struggle when it comes to that.
And boys, honing in on, most valuable player watch for the year, I know we've got, several guys you could pick from, but Chase, we'll start with you. You've got a surprising player in my mind, so let's walk through that, shall we?
It's not so surprising to those that have watched him, especially recently. Joel Embiid, he's missed out on the conversation due to injury multiple times, but this year I think is the year he finally gets over that hump and gets that award. Right now his biggest competition is Jokic, which I know, Jack, you'll talk about in a second. But Embiid is just leading the way in scoring at a level we have not seen from the center position. I know Jokic is great at everything else, but Joel Embiid is just a monster on that floor, and I think when it comes down to it, you take those 2 players away from their teams, I think Embiid just means more at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think, Jokic obviously trying to go for the Triple Crown 3 years in a row, but at the same time, Embiid, been phenomenal. Not going to discredit him, but Jokic, he's dragged the really poor team to the playoffs for a couple years in a row. Obviously, Denver added a little more help around the perimeter with Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown. But at the same time, you look at Jokic, you look at what he's doing. He's almost averaging a triple-double. He's leading his team to the #1 overall seed in the West in a really difficult West. And it's not a triple-double like Westbrook was. They're not the 6th seed in the West. They're the 1 seed. They've won 51 games. They've almost cemented it.
And with this topsy-turvy West, guys, you both have drastically different, I would say, finals predictions. Gray Ost will be happy with one of them, I would presume. But boys, you guys both have interesting ends of the spectrum. Chase, we'll start with you. Who have you got in the final, and who's taking it all?
So I think this is going to be a very interesting playoff. Not only the race to get into the playoffs, especially when it comes to the West, but especially on that Western Conference side, who's going to make it all the way to the finals? It's going to take a lot of luck. It's going to take a lot of heart and a lot of depth. But right now I have the Nuggets and the Sixers making it all the way, with the Sixers coming out on top in a 6-game series.
And Jack, with you, what do you think about the Sixers?
I look at the Sixers and I look at Joel Embiid, and I think he is one of the most dominant big men of our generation. And I think of him as just a modern Ralph Sampson with a deeper bag. That's what I see. But I still worry about PJ Tucker. Look at that contract. 3 years, $37 million. He shot 21% in the month of March. He's going to be out there in crunch time. Is he going to be a threat from three? Tobias Harris, streaky player. Tyrese Maxey, is he going to elevate to the level that we all think he can? But is he going to?
And I mean, your finals has got a clash of a couple stars. One matchup that one Gray Ost might be very, very pleased with. Can you walk us through it?
Well, I think I would also be pleased with this matchup, which is why I picked it. But also, I do believe that the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns are the two best teams in basketball when at full health because of Giannis Antetokounmpo, because of Kevin Durant, because of Devin Booker. And the Bucks played most of the year without Chris Middleton. They're still probably going to be the number one overall seed in the East. They have a huge matchup with the Boston Celtics tonight, and that will be massive for seeding. But then on the other side of things, you look at the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant just came back last night for injury. Obviously wasn't too great of a night, but at the same time, you have a three-headed monster of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. And I say that, at the same time, both equally good teams, but I do think the Milwaukee Bucks come out on top if they are to pull this off.
So, two drastically different playoffs looks, two drastically different finals looks, two spectacular analysts. Only one of them or neither of them may be right. We'll see. Next up is the Masters.
Hello and welcome to One-on-One Sports. I've got Matt and I've got Aiden, and we're here to talk about the Masters. So, Matt, we'll start with you. Talk to me about the Valero Texas Open.
So the Valero Texas Open, we are here. The final weekend before the Masters tournament is also the final chance for any of these golfers to get into the Masters. One spot available. The winner takes it. I mean, there's a bunch of players that have been playing really well recently. I know, Aiden, you're going to talk about Ricky Fowler in a little bit, but Tyrrell Hatton, a few top 5 finishes. Chris Kirk, who has been on fire this year, kind of a no-name up until this time, has had a few good finishes, top 10 finishes here at Valero so far. Matt Kuchar has finished in the top 12 the last 3 years, and J.J. Spawn, the reigning champion, got to mention him. But for me, as a Ricky Fowler lover, I've got to go Ricky Fowler, but I'll let you talk about that a little more.
I'm going to join you in that department as a fellow Ricky Fowler lover. He's really been putting it together. He changed up his putting stroke. He got a new putter, and he's really just been putting it together in these last couple tournaments. Tied for 10th at the WM Phoenix Open. Has improved his game big time past the 5 tournaments. Was tied 13th in the Players, and the Players was a tough outing for a lot of guys, and he hasn't missed a cut since the Shriners Children's Open in October of 22. So he's really been putting it together, and I think he'll come out of the Valero Open with a little fire, and then roll into the Masters, and you may see him up in that top 10, top 15 category in that Masters era.
Yeah, if he ends up winning the Texas Valero Open, he's definitely a dark horse that you can talk about, and I think we're going to get that into that a little later. But he is he's number 1 in the PGA Tour in putting from 20 to 25 feet so far this season. When you're at the Masters, proximity to the hole is very, very tough to get close to those pins, and on tough greens, that putting is going to be huge for him, so watch out for him when the Masters comes around next week.
Absolutely, and depending where those pins are located in the Masters weekend, you could be putting, that 10 to 15 foot putt could be going over 3-4 breaks.
Yep.
So being on lock from that, 15, 20 foot range is really ideal to, one of the 3 or 4 keys to win the Masters.
Yep, for sure.
Excellent, good to hear. And let's get back to the actual winners of the Masters tournament themselves. What do you have for us?
Yeah, so last year, Scotty Scheffler won it. I think he's going to do it this year. Went back-to-back at the Waste Management. He, fresh off the win at the Players, went 5-2 at the Dell Technologies match play, which personally was really fun to watch him play, and he's really just put it together. Yeah. He won the 2022 Masters by 3 strokes on Rory, and Rory really had a struggle on that last day. So even though it was close, I think he can really put it together and come out again and being one of those few back-to-back Masters champions.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Scotty Scheffler's putting one of the best stretches together in golf that we've seen in a long time. He's made all the cuts so far. He's had 9 top 25s, 7 top 10s, 5 top 5s. He has made it in the top 5 in half the appearances he's had so far in this PGA Tour season. First in strokes gained off the tee, first in strokes gained tee to green, and he's top 6 in every single scoring category so far this year. Scotty Scheffler is playing out of his mind right now, and if there's anybody that can go back-to-back in the Masters, it's got to be him. But one person that we haven't talked about in a while, Jon Rahm. I mean, he had one of the best starts that we've seen to this season, getting almost $10 million worth of winnings in the first month and a half of the year. So even though he has had a little shakeup in the past few weeks, and he hasn't played well, not at the WGC, did not play well there, look for him to come back, bounce back, and come in a big major tournament.
I do think Jon Rahm's going to be in that position where if Scotty or Rory fall off, he'll be right there in that, fourth, fifth spot to really just kind of accelerate himself up there and be that person to take advantage if Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy fall apart, which at the Masters, you really never know.
You never know.
They fall apart every time, like we saw Spieth a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Fall apart on that hole.
Obviously, a lot of the big names there, no surprises in what we've discussed so far. Now let's get into some of the dark horses. You alluded to it earlier, Matt. You want to expand upon that?
Yeah, so, I mean, when I thought of this question and thought of dark horses, I wanted to talk about people that, haven't been, they've been playing well, but you don't really expect them to go out there and win the Masters. One of those guys got to be Jordan Spieth. I mean, 3-4 years ago, you would have expected him to be on the top half of the top 10 in the leaderboard every single time he comes around, but he's been struggling and he hasn't been able to close out. Obviously, you mentioned before his really bad fall off at the Masters. I believe it was in 2017. It was a lot of balls in the water. A lot of balls in the water.
He's one of us.
There. But if there's anybody that can come back to Augusta National and put together a good round, it's Jordan Spieth. We've seen him on Thursday and Fridays the past few years be able to put together some good rounds and just not be able to complete a full 4-round weekend. But if anybody can do it, it's him.
Yeah, and I think with him, putting in that Thursday, Friday really solid rounds and maybe getting him that gap that he needs to just kind of do damage control Saturday, Sunday, where he's not, he doesn't need to, go for that eagle. He just needs to go for that par or birdie and kind of make that gap as, consistent as possible across the weekend. I think he could do it. Personally, for me, my dark horse is going to be Jason Day. He's kind of fallen off. He's kind of been in like the shadows of the golf world for a couple of years now, but he's really come out strong in the last couple of weeks. He beat Scotty at the Deltec, which was a big win for him and kind of a huge loss for Scotty because we thought Scotty was going to basically go undefeated at that Dell Technologies. He is pumping it off the tee. He's averaging like 320, 330. He's getting up to those Rory McIlroy numbers off the tee, which at the Masters can hurt you and, be beneficial. And I think with his, he's not only driving it really far off the tee, he's also been able to put it where he wants it. And that's key at the Masters. So I think he is going to, similar to Jon Rahm, be in that spot where if people start to fall off, he can jump up there or, he's just going to put a big weekend together and have himself a green jacket.
And we cannot go a Masters dark horse segment without mentioning the GOAT, Tiger Woods.
Exactly.
I mean, he's obviously had his injuries, but come on. I mean, if he was able to win it a few years ago, why can't he win it this year? Someone that has been around there so many times, so many victories. I mean, I just had to mention him. He's got to give a shout in there.
Exactly. And Tiger is in contention to win a green jacket every single year. And it does not matter what year it is. He will forever and ever be in contention for a green jacket.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you for breaking it down for us, gentlemen. Matt, Aiden, the Masters. We'll be right back.
That'll do it for another edition of One-on-One Sports.
Make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
And until next time, whose side
are you on?